Good afternoon, class. Hope you guys had a fantastic Easter. Um, Hopefully that the warm weather we had at the end of last week was good for you guys. And sorry that this past weekend, if you are in Illinois or in the Midwest, it's been kind of rough, windy, and cold. But we're going to dive right in to the lecture for today. Sorry, I uploaded on YouTube as Intellectual Wellness 2. That was just a misprint. The first one, last week's was Intellectual Wellness 1. This week's is Intellectual Wellness 2. So we're going to dive into Intellectual Wellness 2. And basically, we're going to look at learning styles. And kind of the overview of this. So I'll dive a little bit more into this sec, but the term learning style is commonly defined as how learners gather, sift, interpret, organize, and store information for the future use. All individuals tend to have a dominant learning style they prefer, but oftentimes they can have multiple ones. So, for instance, I'm a very visual learner, but I have tendencies of all of the learning domains, and each category of like how I learn, I have specific ways that I have to do things. Even though I might normally be a visual learner, sometimes I might fall into other categories. Like I said, it can be dependent on the situation that we have. If you understand your learning style strategy, you can better suit yourself to what you're doing, and you can be a more effective learner. So if you know you're a visual learner, you can tailor how you study and how you learn better to what fits you, or for your auditory or kinesthetic or whatever. But we're going to talk about those here during this video. So Howard Gardner, he's some theorist guy that doesn't really matter who he is, but he developed this multiple intelligence theory. There's right here, there are 7 intellectual types. So we're going to talk about the 5 learning like domains, but there's intellectual types, and so there's 7 here. So we have the first type is linguistics, and that deals with word and language. Second one is logical or mathematical, and that's logic and numbers. Musical, and again, this is multiple intelligence, and what kind of fall in is how we learn or how we see ourselves developing. So musical is sound, rhythm, obviously music. Bodily kinesthetics, so that's being aware of where your body's at, and how we function that way. Spatial or visual, so that's image in space, being able to tell distance and stuff like that. Interpersonal, and that's other people's feelings, being able to be aware of other people's feelings. Intrapersonal is being self-aware. So there's 2 subcategories of all of these. So you have social and solitary learners. These explain where physically where you prefer to learn. Utilize these often within the 5 learning styles. So the first one is social. You prefer learning in groups or in class and enjoy one-on-one time with the instructors. You want to socialize with people about what you're learning. Study groups are beneficial for you in particular. So I fall in both these categories for each individual different learning style that I have. So when it comes to like book learning, for me, I cannot be social. But when it comes to like projects or developing theories or making programming, especially when it comes to like my job with coaching, like I need to be around people to bounce ideas off them and to learn better that way. But then we have the solitary idea that you prefer to learn alone. You dislike learning in groups. It's too distracting and you need to be very independent. So I personally, when it comes to book learning, so when I did college and when I did grad school, when I did learning, I couldn't be around people. I would rent a whole study room just for myself so people wouldn't bother me. I wouldn't be distracted by people getting up to go to the bathroom or people in the library, people getting books. So I was a solitary learner when it came to that stuff. So we're going to start this 5 learning styles. So we have visual learner, and this is predominantly me. So you or we prefer to communicate or using pictures, images, graph, organize information, and communicate it that way. You see it. You physically get to see what's happening. Some common characteristics for this, for you, the visual learner, is you enjoy learning through visual appealing material. Heck aesthetic. It could be good colored pictures or something like that. You prefer written instruction over spoken instruction. So yes, there's components of both, but I want to see it. We want to see it written down. We want to see it to be able to, for us to develop it, kind of grasp it, so I can visualize it and process it at my own time. You need a quiet place to study. You don't want to be around people typically. Have trouble following long lectures. I don't typically traditionally credit this to my visual learning as much as it is my self-diagnosed ADD, but I would agree with that. I have trouble following long lectures, even long video lectures. I know 20 minutes. It's tough. I'm going to try to get through it. You like to take notes. I take notes on everything. I'm talking to people on the phone. I'm taking notes. I'm talking to students or my athletes. I'm taking notes. And like to see instructors' facial expressions or body language. And they want to see what they're doing, how they feel about it, and how they interpret it themselves. So tips to utilize for visual learners: write things down. Make outlines, handouts. You want to color code the things. So I remember specifically having a binder in college where it was those 5-star notebooks where one color was one folder was one class, and everything that I had was that class. Another color was another class. So everything was color coded. Sit where you have a clear sight line on the instructor. So I was never a front row sitter, but I was always someone that sat in the middle. I never sat off the side. I was like 3 or 4 rows back. I was that person. But I was always in the middle. I had a clear sight line of the instructor, the board, visual aids, screens, things like that. Copy what you see. So you want to copy down what you see. So if it's a graph, draw it, write it down. Use flashcards or watch videos regarding the topic. Create visual reminders and auditory cues. So having those diagrams, having those different graphs that you're able to see as you're learning. Auditory learners, change the topic. Traditionally, auditory learners absorb information best through hearing. Lecture learning is really good for these types of people. Learn effectively through lectures, audiobooks, oral presentation, even music. They're hearing it and they're able to process it that way. That most of the time isn't me. But unless heard, information has little relevance. So even writing down or on the screen, if the teacher didn't say it, then it's tough for them to kind of grasp on what they're talking about. Some common characteristics: talkative, they're good at explaining because they process the information, like to be in study groups, like to read out loud to themselves, follow spoken direction well. So a little bit of me falls into this category, not a lot. I traditionally, and I hope I'm good at explaining things, and I like to read out loud when it comes to relearning things. So hearing it and saying it is much different than having it in your head. We've all read a book or something and then read a character's name but have never said it out loud, and you hear it one time and you go, oh, that's not how I was saying it. But that's auditory learning. Some tips for auditory learning: again, read out loud, repeat facts with your eyes closed so you don't have any distractions, ask questions to the people presenting, participate in group discussions, use audio tapes. This is a little outdated because now we just record lectures, or they're online or stuff like that. We want to record notes in an auditory format after you have written them. So this is kind of unique and a little outdated, but if you write the notes down and then record yourself saying them out loud, you're able to listen to them back, and heck, you can maybe listen to your own podcast. And avoid auditory distractions. Music and background. This is where I fall into this auditory category. I cannot learn with any sort of distraction. I can't have music on. I can't have ticking. I can't have a TV in the next room. I have to have it completely quiet because I get distracted very easily. Use word associations to remember key points, like this sounds like this, so this reminds me of this. Verbal learners. Somewhat like auditory, a little bit different. So instead of hearing, they want the spoken language, information presented audibly. Some common characteristics: they retain information given through repetition, saying it over and over and over again. They like to express themselves through spoken or written language. Oftentimes these people are really good at just regurgitating memorization things. They do well in lecture settings. That's not me. I don't traditionally do well in a lecture setting, even though I'm teaching lecture class. I'm sorry, guys. Some tips for verbal learners. Read out loud to yourself. Tell each other what you've learned. If you can tell someone what you've learned, you understand what's happening. Rewrite or your notes are outline. Rewrite them. So when I was in college, I would write my notes. This is before everyone had laptops. Not that I'm that old, but people didn't bring laptops to class. And if you did, it was kind of weird. But now it's normal. I would write my notes down, and then I would go home and I would rewrite them in a separate notebook. And that really helped me learn because I was able to outline the chapter exactly how I wanted it to be outlined. Recite information you have learned. Use acronyms. I was a big acronym guy. For when I studied psychology in school, there's tons of theories, tons of explanations. So you have to learn these like steps and stages. And so I'd have these acronyms and none of them made sense, but they helped me learn. And take lecture-style courses or workshops. You want to avoid the labs. Traditionally, you work better by yourself. You don't traditionally have people with you, and so that helps with the verbal learning. Tactical or kinesthetic. This is the physical learner. Absorb information best by doing, experience, touching, moving, being able to be more active. Traditionally, these people can't sit well long, not because they have some sort of ADHD or ADD, but because they learn well by moving, physically doing the motion. Unfortunately, with things like biology and math, there's not a lot of physical movement involved, but like even signing out the numbers. My mother is a kinesthetic learner, and she, to help her learn in like high school and college, she actually learned American Sign Language, which helped her learn and process through, not because she wanted to learn a second language, but to help her learn, and now she knows sign language. Enjoys the feeling or discovery in the action. They often like that idea of like physically feeling that they have the skill or whatever they've learned. Some common characteristics: they enjoy demonstration, master skill through intimidation practice, think in terms of physical action. Everything has a motion to it. Prefer participating rather than sitting and watching. They would rather do it wrong in front of people to learn rather than have someone else do it and they learn from them. Tips for kinesthetic learners: create models, demonstrate a principle. So there's an idea, if there's a principle that you need to understand, demonstrate it, stand up, do it, write it out, whatever you need to do. Practice the technique, practice what's happening. Simulation, study in a comfortable position, not necessarily a chair or a desk. Sometimes it's on the floor, on your stomach, or in your bed, or in those weird study nooks that some places have. Study in short blocks. Take lab classes. If there's a lab offered for it, the class, take it, because traditionally you learn better that way. Use memory games or flashcards. Go on field trips. You're able to physically see some of those places to be able to process that learning. So, a couple weeks ago I had an Easter egg, and some of you guys got some free points for that. I'm going to do it again. Here's another Easter egg. So you have till, I have the date right now in case you guys watch this at a different time, April 15th, which is a Wednesday. You have till 10 p.m. to email me a new hobby that you've picked up during this quarantine situation. One for me, I've really gotten into an old computer game that I did literally back in the early 2000s called Roller Coaster Tycoon. If any of you have heard of it before, like the classic one, that's what I'm playing. And it's a new hobby or something that I've kind of picked up, or an old one. So you have till April 15th at 10 p.m. to email me a new hobby that you've done because of quarantine. Moving on. Logical learners, you'll get 10 points for that, by the way. Logical learners. Everyone wants to say they're a logical learner. Most of us are not. But like logical and mathematical reasoning. Oh, I know this because it makes sense. Recognize patterns easily and make connections between content. They oftentimes are understanding, oh, this does this because this, and then this, and then this. They're able to connect them throughout what's happening. Some common characteristics, you group and classify information to help you learn. So I'm packing this together, I'm packing this together, I'm packing this together, and I'm learning them because they fall into this category. You've made the categories. Create agendas, itinerary, and to-do list. So again, all of us have some tendency as logical learners. I had a minute-by-minute agenda calendar in college, like literally like every 15 minutes was laid out because it was logical. Like I had time to study for this, had time to study for this, had time to study for this, and I was able to do that so I could learn at my appropriate time. Do you like working out strategies and using simulation? This part wasn't me. I didn't want to necessarily learn the strategy. I just wanted to know how it happened. I just wanted to be able to explain what it was and then move on. So, but they traditionally like working out strategies and using simulations. Some tips for logical learners. Create lists when you study key materials. Use statistics with key points that you have learned. Take courses that utilize mathematical reasoning, statistics, biology, stuff like that. Complete hands-on projects. Utilize certain computer applications, numbers and logistics. So if you're a stats person, you're able to plug that in or know how to work Excel real well. You're able to plug that in and be able to use functions so that you understand the learning at a logistical level. Be cautious about overanalyzing. Don't spend too much time on one specific situation. Just because you got the right answer but you're not quite sure how it happened, that's awesome, but you want to make sure you move on. Don't overanalyze something until you almost get it wrong. It's kind of like the overanalyzing test question. Go with your first instinct. So to wrap up this whole learning style, understanding your domain style can help you become a better learner. Don't view a course as negatively if it's not taught in your specific learning style. If it's not taught in a kinesthetic way, or it is a lecture and you're not supposed to be good at lecture, don't worry about that. Many individuals learn in different situations depending on the situation. Just because don't do well in lectures, there are components of lectures that you can do well in. You have strength in multiple areas. So general study tips, and this is kind of cliche, and I know a lot of you guys are well into college and should know these by now, but review your notes within 24 hours of taking them. You're going to have a 60% higher retention rate of what you studied if you study within 24 hours of learning it. Remember, the goal is to have long-term retention, not necessarily short-term. Yes, cramming helps with tests. Unfortunately, that's factually sound. But doing this 24-hour thing will help you for long-term. Studies show and have long-term retention of information is higher when cramming did not take place. Get enough sleep, exercise, lower your stress level. All of those stuff go hand in hand. High stress anxieties will lead to less learning. All of these combined with knowledge of learning styles may lead to increased success in college life. So doing all of these are really helpful. Last thing, one thing that really helped me in college was doing the triad of learning. I named it that. So before you go to class, read the textbook, read the bullet points of what's about to be learned. So that's the first time you're learning. That's the first time you're seeing it. The second one is in class, hearing your professor do it, listening to the presentation, whatever it is. That's the second time. Third time is doing that 24-hour rule. Within 24 hours, go back, read your notes, rewrite your notes. That's 3 times. So you've seen it 3 times within the span of 48 hours. That's helping you learn retention throughout this college process as you process all of this knowledge. Next class, not really next class, but your next PA log is going to be due Friday, April 24th at 10 p.m. It's your second to last one. Again, reminder, I can't accept the late work just because you forgot to do it. Having it sent to me on Monday, I don't take it. Unfortunately, it's open for 48 hours, so you can submit it for any time in those 48 hours. But it will be due and it will close at Friday, April 24th at 10 p.m. Your exam this week. I will email you guys to remind you, but it opens up at Wednesday at noon and closes Thursday at 10 p.m. That's April 15th and April 16th. Do not forget that. That is big. I will email you, remind you. I'll put this in the description of the video below. I'll remind you tomorrow. I'll remind you Thursday about the exam. Thanks for watching, guys. You guys are awesome. Have a great rest of your week. I will see you guys next Monday. Hope you guys have a fantastic Easter. See ya.